All right, welcome back, everyone. Like I said, I do have a very special guest joining us, and it's Mr. Nathaniel Gillis, and really glad to have you on. He is I would say you're a demonologist, but you're more of an outlier, right? In all categories,
Yeah, no
you
doubt,
don't
no
like to
doubt. I'm not
conform to any
sure what I
boxes.
am at this point. Yeah, I don't know what
Exactly.
I am.
All right, well then let's get straight into it. You've been studying this stuff for a long time now, and
Mhm.
like you mentioned in other interviews, you started out getting interested in this stuff because of that sort of haunted house experience you had as a young kid, right? What
Correct.
would you describe this intelligence as? This, if they're not demons, if they're not ETs, right? The ufologists don't completely agree with you. The demonologists don't agree with you.
hmm
What are we looking at here, Mr. Gillis?
I think it is an intelligence, obviously, but I think the model that makes the most sense to me is parasitic and something that has designed mythologies since the dawn of recorded history. An intelligence that's diversified its identity in our eyes, leaning in and out of archetypes as it incarnates and reincarnates, again, interweaving itself into the fabric of time. But in terms of its origin, it seems to be consciousness. And it has access to our species, consciousness first, to where, like I said in another interview the other day, where instead of this phenomenon having to shoot down a jet, a fighter jet, it can just commandeer the consciousness of the pilot. That's
Yeah,
quite literally what we're dealing with, my friend. And so I'm not really quite sure of its origin. The only thing I've been able to kind of collect are the various behavioral patterns where no matter what mask it wears, no matter how it wants us to present it to others, alien, ET, actually, all this interdimensional, um, it remains the same. There are agendas that it reincorporates into its newest incarnation. And so if we as researchers and experiencers alike, if we kind of understand that and approach these case studies and look for these behavioral patterns, you'll see, in a sense, they're almost like genetic markers, where no matter what this phenomenon presents to us, we could just say, okay, yeah, this seems to be pointing to a singular intelligence through and through. And so
yeah.
when I came to that conclusion, I had to ask myself a series of questions. Number one, why is it wanting us to believe that it's different phenomena? What is
hmm
the purpose of that? And why is it that no matter, like I said, what incarnation it's manifesting as, the hybridization program is always present,
hmm
always. And so those are the kind of the building blocks of my hypothesis.
Okay, yeah, several questions there. Um,
Mhm.
so first of all, like you said, they can possess the pilot rather than take over the plane, and from there it
Right.
goes. But does that mean that it has access to everybody, anyone with consciousness? I mean, we in this reality, it does seem like there are people sort of with consciousness, maybe with less
Yeah.
consciousness, maybe
Right.
with no consciousness, like organic portals. What about
Mhm.
these people with more awareness, more consciousness? Are they able to really infiltrate them too?
We've yet to determine that. There are rules that the cognitive interfaces follow. What do I mean by that? When Dear Aunt Edna appears, and it's this intelligence masquerading, there are rules built into that mask
Yeah.
that we're just now learning about. To where if I was to believe less in the mask it's wearing, it would have less authority over me.
Right.
And somehow believing in that incarnation more, somehow it empowers the intelligence behind it. And this is what disturbs me the most. Okay, why would an extraterrestrial fly light years just to test what you and I believe or measure the amount of belief we have in it? Whatever we're dealing with is ontological and existential to a point where I believe it has access to us in ways that we're not currently understanding. And one of the reasons why I say that is because when it appears to us, it often manifests to the senses we utilize the most to interpret reality, which means that it can blind us by our own vision.
Okay.
And like simultaneously, it's targeting something spiritual in a way. And we're just now starting to learn what these questions are.
Hmm. Okay. No, that's very interesting. In terms of flying light years, I don't know. I don't think you even believe that yourself because you've said
No, not at
they're
all.
interdimensional, right?
Yeah, Nick Pope. Of course, we knew that within apparitional theory, the beings can materialize to the touch and then dematerialize through a wall. So we
Right.
understood that in hauntology and seance research. But with respect to the ET body itself,
Oh, right. Yeah.
we were operating off of the physical, tangible body. And yet, when Nick Pope came out recently on Whitley Strieber's show, it said that the NIHIs we are in possession of have interdimensional qualities to the point that we don't even know if they're dead or alive.
Mhm.
What are we dealing with? And so at first blush, I heard that, and I know a lot of people have their concerns about Nick Pope's research. It is what it is. But I ran that through one of my channels that used to work for the Ministry of Defense.
Oh, okay.
And he told me with no uncertain terms, yes, that is true. So if in fact we are dealing with apparitional entities, that are still within the ETH model. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But what it does point to is that this is a singular intelligence that has diversified itself for whatever reason, and we'll get to that maybe later on in the interview, and yet its capabilities are limited.
Yeah. And I guess going back to the previous point in terms of the people with more consciousness, whereas the people with that are more, let's say, organic portals that they can access directly,
Mhm.
um, is it is that belief, is that extra mask or that various mask that are used throughout the ages, throughout the
Mhm.
times, whatever fits, is that mainly so they can get access to the other people's consciousness?
Yes,
You think?
absolutely. Yes, yes. There's a grouping mechanism or grooming mechanism employed.
Right.
And when that cognitive interface is interacted with between the experiencer and this phenomenon, there is a symbiotic relationship created. And the theory I've been operating off of as of late is that it's coming to us, but it's also coming through us. There's a way where it's not just placing a mask on itself, but many of these masks we're witnessing are coming from the consciousness of the experiencer themselves. And that's what is incredible. And so that's why it's symbiotic as well. That's also why we see the guides that manifest as former lovers, the incubus, former lovers, right? And then
Hmm.
the UFO abduction phenomenon, where, okay, when they do manifest as a religious leader, it's usually the religious leader that experiencer is knowledgeable of, worships, and is in the middle of that religious tradition. But what's also incredible to me is that it's limited to the literacy of the experiencer.
I see.
So when Jesus has manifested, it's Jesus according to their image in their mind. It's not the historical Jesus or even that which was written in the historical record, not the Jewish rabbi. It's the Swedish Presbyterian version, which, right, now we're seeing that veil thin to where any scholar of the ancient Near East, if they were in the shoes of that experiencer, would point at them and say, okay, this is laughable. You should know that's not what he really was. And so there is this kind of desire by the phenomenon to bleed into the consciousness of our species by rolling in and rolling out of, stepping in instead of out all archetypes we have. Now, the remaining archetype that we do not have, at least two of them, is Allah and then Yahweh,
Mhm.
both of
Who I
which
think
have
are the
no
same, no?
image. That's debatable. But I guess
Debatable.
my point though is that we have no images for them to step into,
Oh, I see. Okay.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
No
that makes sense.
images whatsoever. And so where you have all, Mahatma Gandhi, all these different religious leaders, sure, I will contort myself the closest I can to what they are and who they were, but it's limited, and we have to see through that mask.
It's interesting because I'm not sure about Allah, but
Mhm.
Yahweh does seem to have more artificial intelligence connections in terms of it doesn't have a singular form and it is the thing that
Oh, it's
adapts.
fascinating. Fascinating. I love that research. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I think that one of the more intelligible models I've been thinking of is just this simulation theory and the program model in which this intelligence can create its own space and then step into it. And we're
Sandbox.
at, Correct. Where you have a program, let's just say a video game. Let's use that analogy. And you already have players created. With those players come rules,
Yep.
characteristics, right? There are limitations to their strengths. And then so the phenomenon will step into each role. Well, those are right, they're the guides. Oh, no, that's the ghost. And all of these come
Right.
with limitations up until when the designer creates his own character, my friend. And then it shields itself from us because we don't really have context to that particular character. Where does it come from? Well, it says it's extraterrestrial. We can't prove that.
Well, and it's very interesting to think about where we get these religious beliefs to begin with, right? I mean, could
Correct.
have they just been inserted from the beginning into the program and then given to us potentially by these archetypes that were already here, these ancient gods, like you talking about them?
Yes. I'm leaning towards that direction. I mean, and I'll tell you what though, when we're experiencing it, it is experiencing us. It
Right.
is a co-evolution of species. And within the fabric, within the actual design, there are bits and pieces of that designer. What does that literally? It's like it's an impartation of consciousness, an impartation of values here. And so that's why when we're looking at technology with respect to how, okay, our ancestors appealed to them with sacrifices and altars, that was, yeah, that's cool. But what did we want? We wanted transcendence. And so they made us feel, right? Like we're transcending. And yet all of this, especially within ufology, it's a reflection of what we want out of it. It's not very
Right.
much what it's not very much centered around what it wants out of us. That is until we look at the various occult connections
Let's get
where
into
it,
that.
right, it really doesn't matter if it's extraterrestrial or if it's a spirit or if it's a demon or if it's a ghost. They're manifesting the same ways. They're manifesting to accomplish the same agendas. And our very first contactees in ufology were employing the Ouija boards.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is what's called the spirit board itself. Yeah, and so I mean, building altars in their attics and channeling this extraterrestrial. So again, my point though is the modus operandi, they're the same.
Right. No, it's it's pretty easy to catch them once you start realizing the techniques that they use are the same. I mean, channeling and possession,
Correct.
communication through Ouija boards. I mean, sure, you can then all of a sudden make the conclusion, yeah, they're just demons. But like you said, they
Right.
have different masks. So in that case, what do you think is their purpose for contact? Because they want to contact us as much as
Mhm.
we want to contact them, it seems, right? By providing some sort of incentive or methodology to begin with,
Yeah.
usually to the people that feel this sense of need to talk to something greater than itself, right? That perceived greater than itself.
Well, yeah, I mean, in some case studies, specifically in seances, like the Philip experiment, where they created a ghost, right? They fabricated an entire life story, the origin of this individual who perished, and then now he's on the other side. They created the archetype, and then something else stepped into the seance. And the psychic medium is now going around the room. Oh, yeah, Patricia, just picking out a name randomly. Hey, Patricia, I noticed that your car broke down recently. You're going to need to get that transmission fixed soon. So from the archetype manifested a superior intelligence that began to demonstrate knowledge that only Patricia knew. What are we doing here? It seems to be that the phenomenon is authoring thoughts that lead to us obeying them. And then once the obedience occurs, it's almost like it's leading us into this interaction. And then by the time we get to where it wants us to be, we don't know exactly what we're dealing with at all.
Yeah.
It's really terrifying to me. I'm not trying to be a fear monger or anything like that, but I mean some of the realities here, they are deeply disturbing because it's almost as if we are being led without even realizing it.
Exactly.
Like literally entire life stories or life events, thoughts, emotions, ideas. And it's alarming to me because we've seen this first in antiquity. This is not new. In
Exactly.
antiquity, okay, who built the first altars? The primordial man. Where would he even get that concept?
Hmm.
And so what we're seeing here is the iceberg effect, where technology appears to be what's on the surface, but underneath the water,
Right.
there is an esoteric value that is it's present.
Yeah, even in terms of psychedelics, how did they know how to create ayahuasca? It was like the
Right.
most impossible combination of ingredients that they oh, the spirits told us. And what's the point of
Absolutely.
ayahuasca? To communicate with them, right? To get those
Right.
insights.
Yeah, it's almost like, well, how did you get here? Well, you built a door. Well, who gave you the design to build the door? Them.
What you're saying is very Gnostic, actually. I mean,
It's
the
absolutely
Gnostics
Gnostic.
the
Yeah.
Gnostics believed, right, that our thoughts and emotions aren't even our own, and we
Mhm.
exist in some sort of construct. Or
Yeah.
more specific sects call it a prison-like matrix,
Hmm.
right? But at its base, we can call it a construct, right? We can categorize it by our belief system as some whatever we want. But
Hmm.
I think that may be too far. So if we're being led and guided our whole lives,
Well,
then what is
yeah,
happening on that other side, right? That brings this idea
absolutely
of
right.
these soul
Absolutely right.
contracts and scripts. And do you think that even your own experience with the haunted house could have been a script leading you down this path?
It's very, very well could be. And one of my heroes in the field, Steve Mary, he and I had a conversation about this when I was in the UK. And he's like, he goes, if the phenomenon has wanted us to, investigate this in order
Right.
to promote it, right? I'm going to be a prophet to them. We've turned the tables on the
Possible.
phenomenon
Possibly, yeah.
because now we're investigating our investigators. And that puts us it puts us in some kind of peril. I mean, people that have done my research or the like, people like Dr. Carla Turner, Barbara Bartholic, even John Mack to a degree, were targeted.
How so?
Dr. Barry Fitzgerald has been targeted. Steve Merritt has been targeted. Both of them in the same time, the same night.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, whatever we're getting close to, it doesn't want to be found out. It doesn't want to be understood. And this gets back to Jacques Vallée's theory about that there's a control system present. And at any point, you can be taken out. And it's
Right.
unfortunate. Oh, 100%. I mean, yes, I said this before. I'll say it again. John Mack, in the same night he died in London, he looked one way on a street, should have looked the other as well. Boom. Other John Macks were killed in the same city, same night.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That reminds me of Terminator.
absolutely. Right. Perfect, perfect description. And so, whatever we're dealing with has access to us as a species in just various ways. I mean, my God. And so if it has that kind of access to us, it's possible that the entire paranormal field is literally just us realizing this is what is normal to us. We're going about, oh, wait a minute, what's that? That's paranormal. But who is that exactly? And if this is consciousness based, then we have to look at murders being sacrifices to them. I know that took a crazy turn. But yes, if you look at sacrifice throughout history, it was murder.
Mhm.
The
Genocide, yeah.
purpose, correct, the purpose of the murder, again, the purpose of the sacrifice was to find someone who was innocent, who didn't deserve it. And for some reason, again, whatever these beings were, took it. Let's do that. Matter, and this is what's crazy is now I'm going to start my research, started to get into what's called fetal magic in antiquity, where that had something to do with, yes, ritual sacrifice and the role that played in conjuring these beings. Now, people, of course, in materialistic ufology will suggest, well, there's a little bit of an occult connection, but it's more nuts and bolts. And I suggest it's no, it's quite the opposite.
Quite the opposite, yeah.
And yeah, if we're going to get into the concepts needed to employ that technology, we're going to get into Lifus Levi, where like in hauntology as a field, we've seen the materializing of spirit. Now we're seeing the spiritualizing of matter,
Mm-hmm.
both of which are under the same umbrella,
Mm-hmm.
employed by the same intelligence. Now, even using those words, tasting them as they come forth, it makes no sense. It's antithetical to the scientific method. But where
Right.
have we heard these cases first? Again, carving the name of spirits onto to amulets, small pieces of metal, and planting that into another body. The consciousness, what's it doing? It's spiritualizing matter.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, yeah.
again, it's
Even,
crazy.
even with the thing that everyone received in
Yeah.
2020, the metals, it's said they have been filled with metals, right? Just like many of the other ones. And on those metals, there were, I don't know if it was a carving or a specific ingredient called luciferase. Now
Hmm.
that's odd, if that's fully
Right.
true.
Hmm.
Are they trying to call upon an entity so that then, kind of like marking cattle, right? I mean, from the get go, it
Oh
seems
yeah.
we were
Oh yeah.
marked with these birth
Well,
certificates and barcodes.
yeah, it's so unique. Excuse me, because in Mesopotamia, there were tribes that were they were allies and had signed treaties with what were called Nephilim, which, yeah, that's who I believe these beings to be. But
Mm-hmm.
they signed treaties, and any and all technologies they inherited from the phenomenon, they would pay homage to them by naming it after them.
Uh,
So it's kind of like a light bulb going on where it's like, ding, wait a minute. No wonder our rocket programs are called certain names, right? Even in
all right,
Russian aeronautics, right? Yes, the Russian aeronauts, yeah. Going out there, and what are we naming this? Okay, they're naming it after Greek gods.
Greek
Why?
god.
Because, right, they're inheriting this stuff during ritual magic, and they're paying homage. They're paying their respects back to what they believe is the origin. And, it's no different than some of our space programs in history, but I'm deeper than that. I think that it's time to seek out new vocabulary and to stretch out of some of the draconian models we've inherited from ufology. Because believe it or not, ufology has been gatekeeping this entire research.
Yeah, I bet.
Right. Well, they're
Just like
extraterrestrials.
mainstream
It's like,
science.
absolutely. Who says they're extra? Oh, we do. Why? Well, why do you say that? Well, because they told us they were. Well, they've also told us they're spirits, guides, angels, and demons.
Mhm.
In their argument, again, it's an ontological fallacy. It's a logical fallacy, even. But what they're saying is, well, the reason we believe they're extraterrestrial is because they've told us they're extraterrestrial during abductions. Based upon that logic, then they're also demons because in witch era literature, they abducted witches and told them they were demons.
Exactly.
So you can't invalidate one theory and then somehow validate the other. If you're going to validate this one based on that evidence, guess what? You just validated the other theory. What this
Exactly.
does,
Yeah.
though, is it reveals the just the intellectual gymnastics they have to go through to justify their model. And yet, when you step out of these incarnations and look at it as one, only then does it make the most sense. Oh, okay. It's an incarnation. It's another masquerade.
Of course, and even throughout the ages of the gods that they had, it just seems to be the same beings over and over again for different cultures. I mean,
Right.
studying the Norse mythology, the Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Hindu mythology, because I'm a big numbers guy. If I see
Mhm.
there's seven gods, Sumerians, seven gods, whatever, seven
Mhm.
Anunnaki, why are there seven?
Right.
Why?
Oh, yeah.
What's the commonalities between all of these things? Was the etymological commonalities between these things as well?
Right.
You can trace them all back,
Right.
and even going back to the fertility, like you mentioned, does that have to do with Ishtar and then being sacrificed later, 9 months later?
Yes, yes. These are called Molech sacrifices. Some people, especially evangelicals, they call it Molech, but the correct pronunciation is
Oh, gotcha.
Moloch,
Yeah.
which is,
Hmm.
yeah, it's yeah. I mean, if we're getting down to sacrifice, ritual sacrifice, yes. In antiquity, there were a variant of acts of sacrifices, and they kind of evolved. from, just being animals that nobody cared about to being
Right.
humans.
Hmm.
Or, yeah, and then, oh my God, it's a female, and then, oh my God, it's a virgin female. The next thing you know, you have babies. So there were
Hmm.
stages. Now, what that does to us is, this is, again, it's not a mirror of what we want from them, because that's not our species. It's what they want from us. What do they prefer?
Hmm. And that's all over the
And
Bible.
that's all over the Bible. Yeah, it's all over everywhere in the Levant, Mesopotamia. And more than that, the Collins Elite Research Group within the Department of Defense, they came to that conclusion that there were factions within our government who had went as far as human sacrifice to gain access.
Hmm.
And again, what we're witnessing is, yes, for a fleeting time, we thought, okay, we're just going to spend all of our hours and all of our money, all of our finances on what we want from them and if we can get it. And I think now we're considering, okay, yeah, but at what cost?
Hmm.
Because there's going to be a demand placed. And I'm more interested in what matters to them than what matters to us.
Well, yeah, I mean, that seems to be the art of war. Always know what your opponent wants and needs so you can pander to them.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
and in terms of these ancient gods, have you heard of the Aryan phenomenon and what happened with the Hindu mythology? Do you think that
Mhm, mhm.
they were access to first? Because the common belief is that civilization started in ancient Sumeria, right, five
Right.
thousand years ago or so. But we
Mhm,
have pyramids and things dated way way before that.
mhm,
So they worshipped the cow, right? Cattle, Hathor, and all
mhm,
that. And in terms of these Aryan beings, we see similar um, characteristics to the Pleiadians from the New Age, if not
mhm,
exact characteristics. And many
mhm,
people even describing seeing them on the craft or whatever. Do you think they're
mhm.
part of the same intelligence that maybe that's where we were first infiltrated in the
Yeah,
Hindu area, Indian area?
I I think that's possible with respect to the geography, but I do believe we are being groomed by a singular intelligence that we've
Okay.
considered other mythologies, and yeah, they're vehicles of meaning. They're incarnations where the phenomenon puts their hand into our glove and we see them manifest. And so, yeah, of course, through mythopoetic thought, yeah, one generation shares that story to the next. By the time it gets to us, it's fascinating. But I do to that point, yes, I do believe that's the case. But what's most interesting about this, and you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned it, is that during these abduction experiences, there are many times when the proto-intelligence manifests, where you have case studies. Okay, so yeah, you're on the ship itself, it's metallic, and it's the abduction scenario in its entirety, and then all of a sudden there is a ghost or someone you know for sure is deceased. Why is that individual there? There's only a handful of possibilities. Either that is not who it appears to be, but the phenomenon knows what they look like when they died and what clothes they died in. That's one idea. Or that is actually that individual who is in the afterlife and is now interacting with you. Both of those are unique situations. But what we have to look at is, if these are separate phenomena, then why is it that even through just the UFO abduction accounts, we see all of this combined in one event?
Right, exactly.
Ghosts and aliens, right? What's going on here? I mean, like the skull experiment in the 90s, like they're trying to contact deceased loved ones and they're performing ritual, right? Bam, they're there, they're doing all their, they got the sidekick there, they have the loved ones there, and we're looking for Bobby. Bobby, are you there? And so they're conversing with who they think is Bobby, and next thing you know, Mr. Blue manifests, which by all measures was an alien. So it appears that one intelligence is using an incarnation to groom and to control it and moderate behavior. And then whenever it wants to, at a time of its choosing, on a location of its choosing. Okay. And then, oh, by the way, now that I have you here. And so this gets back to the lecture I did in the United Kingdom, was who's conjuring who? Because it's allowing us to believe we're in control of the entire process. And then by the time
Exactly.
we realize what's going on, it's too late.
Yeah, and that's very prevalent in the New Age movement, and you know, it's another one of these. What did you call it? Programs or matrix
That's,
constructs.
I'm still searching. Yeah, it's construct, programs, archetypes, pretty much. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
still looking for new vocabulary, which I will have by the end.
grooming programs, right? Where
Right.
all of a sudden, the way it went for me, I started observing various numbers,
Hmm.
being more aware of my surroundings, in a sense, more aware of myself, and that
Hmm.
my reality kind of began to reflect that, as well as what I then learned. It was these beings using
Hmm.
these numbers, potentially trying to communicate with me, right? Since I
Right.
wasn't the most psychic person, right? And many people experience the same things in terms of synchronicities. It'll start with number 33. I've seen that a lot for people, and then progress onwards like it's some sort of degree of graduation, which then reminds me of the
Initiation.
degrees of initiation, the degrees of masonry, of Freemasonry.
Right.
It
Oh my
seems to
God,
be
yeah.
the same programs
Same
running.
thing. Yeah, about 3 or 4 years ago, I was doing research and I thought to myself, I mean, I'm researching contactees and contact experiences. I want one.
You said that.
Yeah, I swear to God I did. Okay. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to advise this to people, and I don't, because most people go in there blindly. I'm pretty guarded, obviously. And so I'm like, well, you know what? Fine. I want an experience. And I just, whatever. One thought went out. And then I just didn't think about it. Well, I just went on with my dad. So I went to bed that night and I was in a dream. And in this dream, I was in a small room in a basement and I saw this light come down. And there was like 3 or 4 other people there with me in the basement. And the only way I can explain it is that it went over top of everyone in that room individually. Went over one man, and that man just translated. He's gone. And I literally saw the other people. I was watching this, observing it, and they were men having nervous breakdowns. They thought they were going to die, and they are freaking out. And so finally it got to me, and then the same thing happened to me. Well, and I don't know what this means, but we'll see what you think. I'll see what you think about it.
Okay.
But it happened to me, and I'm in this when I got to where I was supposed to be, where they wanted me to be. I'm in this kind of like this massive building, and on the right, top right, there was like a fence. And then behind that, there was a glass room, and there were some humans looking down, watching. And then I looked around, and I'm like, oh my God, they're lining us up. And I start looking, oh my God, that was the guy that was right next to me in the room before. So we didn't die. There's something deeper going on. And what they were doing is they would have them sit down and look at symbols. Look at this symbol. What do you see? What can you do with this symbol? And so I'm looking around. This was during COVID. And I remember when I was waiting in line, I looked back and there was a woman in a bodysuit, like no, no, it's kind of like a one piece flight suit, if I could. And she's looking around, and I'm looking at her, and I said, "So what's going on here? Like, what is this?" And she said, "Well, you'll understand soon. You just need to pay attention." And I said, "Okay." And so I started conversing with her. So first I asked her, I said, I said, you realize that there is like a plague going on my planet. I'm just using that kind of language. She goes, yes, I understand. She goes, the same thing happened to my mother on her planet. She goes, so I'm very well versed. I understand. And so then I go back to say something else, and she looks at me and she says, no, I'm not your friend. Stop talking to me. Don't patronize me. Focus. So then I got to my turn, and I'm working with this other individual. The other individual's laying these symbols out to me. And then I turn. He says, okay, turn your chair. And I turned next to a wall, and on the wall was projected a symbol. And I'm looking at the symbol, and nothing's happening. And then one of the men that was up there on the far left came down and started talking to the woman. How's he doing? That's exactly what I said. How's he doing? And she said, he's doing okay. He's doing good. He needs to focus more. He just needs to focus more. And that was it. So I don't know it was weird. But what this appears to be, at least throughout history, the pattern confirming evidence suggests this is initiatory practice,
Right. Exactly.
that they're initiating people, and in some cases actually preparing them for disembodiment.
Hmm. Just like with the ships, right?
Absolutely, my friend. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Right on point to
Here's what
where,
I think.
yeah.
Let me know what you
Go,
think of my theory.
go ahead.
Um, so there's this woman I followed her work. She also does very interesting work in terms of everything, combining all of the research.
Hmm.
Um, Angelique Anagnostou. She wrote a
Hmm.
very interesting book called "Can You Stand the Truth?"
Hmm.
And in that, she goes over this UFO abduction phenomenon, in which she claims that these beings are coming from a future point in our timeline, also potentially, uh, and they are the same Greek gods, and they're looking for the spiritual component that they lost at some
Hmm.
point in time, or if they never had it, potentially as well.
Hmm.
Now,
Interesting.
with the initiatory practice, that I think, just like we have these secret societies or people sort of working behind the scenes, right? Gatekeepers,
Hmm.
um, guides, even. I think they need to replace those people constantly, right? But in
Right,
order to
right, right.
develop these people, they need to have some sort of trauma, some sort of deficiency that makes them feel more special than others, right? So, best people to get are, of course, the ones waking up that see things earlier, the ones quote
Hmm.
unquote smarter than others or more aware. And right, just kind of like you take away the leaders of or the leaders of the revolutionary army.
Hmm.
The government steps in. Oh, come join us. Don't lead a revolution. Don't need that.
Right, right,
Become one
right.
of us. Become one of the gods. Right
Yeah,
from
yeah. You
lead
shall
to
not die.
gold.
You shall become like a god.
Shall become ye
Yes.
shall become gods. Exactly. It's
Yep.
within the programming to begin with, right? That's their main, not their main,
Yes.
but it seems to be one of their
Well,
more bigger priorities.
yes, yeah, it's definitely one of their methodologies. And what's so unique about that, possibly troubling, is the fact that they're targeting the aspects of our species we are the most ignorant of, where we have no frame of reference. We have
Right.
no context. We have no argument. We can't say yay or nay. We can't, what does the color blue taste like? It doesn't have a taste, it doesn't have a flavor. And yet it's coming here, right, from aspects which we cannot possibly begin to understand. And I think that's not a bug, that's a feature. To where, again, where the phenomenon creates its own character and it relies on the ignorance, the disability of our being, the human mortal condition. If you do this, if you interact with us, we will help you become like a god. Well, what is that? The only references we have are in antiquity, or at least the earliest. And the Enuma Elish, which one author said it like this, it's fascinating. It said that the ghost of a man is made from the flesh of a god, which now we would get into apparitional theory. What is that? Which, by the way, we go into we would get into some of Dr. Carla Turner's research where she had an experiencer who was told directly by one entity that it's your body, but it's our soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, that literally the soul itself is a different species than the body it's inhabiting.
Oh.
Which that's why my lecture kind of in the UK was an homage to Dr. Carter's work. The Malter is a species within. And so, oh, you paused on me. We good? I don't
The
know,
network
man.
seems to
You're
be a bit
you're
unstable. Can you hear me?
you're frozen on my end, but I can
Oh,
hear you.
okay. Yeah, you were frozen on my end. You're back now.
Oh my,
Sorry about
cool.
that.
Let it go. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
That's
So that was frozen reference. Frozen reference. Well, so yeah, what are we dealing with? I don't really know, my friend, but I can tell you there are certain models that I resonate with more than others, and that is the parasitic model, the
right.
symbiotic model, and the simulation model.
I think those are all intertwined. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And going back to the ghost body is what did you say exactly?
The ghost of a man is made from the flesh of a god.
The ghost of a man. And what would you describe the ghost of a man? What would that be?
Well, I think there's a constitution of consciousness. I don't believe it's just thought. And I don't know. I mean, I think that we would look at memory and motion, where it would obviously possess not just obviously its consciousness, but it would possess memories, it would possess traditions, beliefs.
Exactly.
Yes, and yeah, belief is the form thought takes when it is willing and able to be inhabited. That's why I believe this gets into just the religious philosophy, just really deep stuff. But my point being that there is a portion of the soul they seem to be initiating within the experiencer. And when you have like abductees, like Chris Bledsoe and the like, who are being told and are telling us, this is how they taught me how to fly the craft when I was out of body.
Mhm.
Well, they're not training you for muscle memory.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so there is a recruiting, literally mentoring the consciousness while it's still in the shell.
Right. So you've heard of this notion of the astral body, right?
Right.
Right. What we experience in our dreams, or more likely that astral psychical body, right? The psyche.
Mm-hmm.
And that astral body, it seems to be contained of memories,
Mm-hmm.
memories being tied to emotions. And if you followed
Right.
Carlos Castaneda's work, he also figures the same thing. This body grows bigger and bigger throughout our lifetimes here, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then it seems at the end of our life, we experience this memory wipe. And even in the Book of the Dead, we are feasted upon. So all the demons
Right.
come out and start feasting on us, in a sense, uh,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like ripe fruit.
Yeah, that
And
they have ripened.
right.
Yes.
And even in, NDEs, oh, it's not your time yet. You must go back. What do you mean it's not my time yet?
Who determines
Yeah,
that?
exactly. Who are you to even tell me that?
Yeah, that's strange.
If
I
not a farmer.
a farmer, right? That's the cattle hypothesis, and there is man that plays such a role. Unfortunately, yeah, it's like a vine. You ever look at like tomatoes? I like to sometimes I like to cook, and I look at vine ripened tomatoes. Well, because vine ripened, yeah,
Hmm.
they're ripening us. They're monitoring us. They're curating our consciousness in a sense. And there is evidence to suggest that they feed on the negative emotion.
Okay.
The encounter I had in my youth, the intelligence was projecting terror upon me
Hmm.
in like stalking the way I believed or disbelieved in it. Do you believe this? Well, yeah. Okay, that's permission.
100%. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
I'm getting my hooks in you. And the deeper the belief is, the deeper the manifestation and the authority it has over you. This is why I believe the experiencer I was working with, when they manifested to her, they manifested as a cartoon character and then started to measure her belief in the image.
Very
Give me
interesting.
more, right? Give me more authority. We've seen that in incubi case studies. The case study I had in India, where yeah, the entity appeared to the female in the image of a lover, and if it didn't work, it would the next time it would contort itself to another lover, and each and every time it was like working her consciousness like a safe. Okay, that's not working. I'm going to evolve according to you then. Okay, I'll be back. And so it's very strange, but it implies that there is a learning matrix present.
Very similar to what we see with AI currently.
Absolutely.
It's adapting to our every move, growing, collecting all
Yeah.
our data. Why do you think the billionaires are trading data? Basically, they're buying data.
Right. To create models of us.
Hmm.
How can we prepare? How can we moderate their behavior and determine results that are in our best interest? How can we monitor their perceptions? So this is also powerful because belief plays a measure in
Yeah.
this. It's like with Ted Rice, they were trying to have it, of course, with his grandmother, and his grandmother was like, okay, look, I'm not doing this. And so, yeah, all of a sudden, her deceased husband comes out from the shadows.
Hmm.
Now, watch this, is important. If we
Hmm.
are to believe that was really her husband, then we have to believe her husband wanted to take her by force.
Exactly.
And if that wasn't her husband, listen to this logic real quick. If we're to acknowledge that it wasn't her husband, then we at least know that they will take the form of ghosts in order to bend our will, to groom us into permissive will. If that's the case, then why isn't it the case when abductees are saying, well, I met a deceased loved one in my abduction, or someone that had died? To me, again, it's the same methods, different masks. And but that's just where I'm at right now. And I'm taking most of May and most of June off because, quite honest, number one, I'm getting burned out, but it's so repetitive. I am, and I don't mean to be, where I'm doing sometimes 2 or 3 shows a day. It's impossible, right? Like this is where I'm at. And then okay, well, where are you at the next show? This is where I told you,
Yeah,
this is where I'm
that's where I'm
at.
at.
Does it make
Yeah, yeah.
sense?
No, that's why
Yeah. And
I'm trying to
so,
ask. I'm trying to get much deeper to with you
yeah.
on these subjects because I've also studied them. And um, so let's talk about the soul aspect, like you mentioned, that they also own our soul. Right now, in my
Right.
opinion, that's different from the spirit. I see the soul as a capsule designed by them. If
Okay.
not them, then that singular AI entity that may, have created these archons or archetypes, right?
Mhm.
Archangels, right? Even going back to the negative idea that they're feasting for negative energy, I think
Right.
there is a dualistic side to that, a dualistic and opposing side to that, a
Mhm.
positive frequency, right? Some
Mhm.
cars take gasoline, some cars take diesel. Some people prefer vegetables, others meat,
Mhm.
right? I think there's nuances to the level of vibratory energetic frequency that they like to possess or transfer or eat, consume.
Mhm.
And even Robert Monroe, who I know you've studied his work, he claims that love is actually the highest frequency of Lush, or the
Mm.
love that we experience here, at least, right now. That's true. So, do you think that it is possible, without our consent, for them to even have access to our soul, much less our spirit? Because I know you mentioned the Jesus phrase where he says that all seed is mine, right?
All seed is mine now. There's a Dr. Carla Turner case, and then I also had a very similar case as an incubi
Yeah,
encounter. Um, yeah, so there are, okay, so if we're going to say that, well, let me back up and punt here real quick. What I'm saying is that it seems to be the negative forces are all underneath the same umbrella.
of course.
Now, in my upbringing, I was evangelical, and there were guys that were initiates of the light,
Of the light,
and
right? The Brotherhood of
a-
Light.
absolutely insane. I
Hmm.
mean, insane. One of them was Hashir, who was very, like, he had a very strict. You got to do this. You know, he was an old school Marine, fought in World War II, but he prayed and meditated for 4 hours a day, every day for 30 years. He would fast for a month and then just nothing, and then dwindle down to nothing, and then build his weight back up, do the same thing. And it got to a point like he was absolutely, I mean, it's like Gandalf the White, not Gandalf the Grey, Gandalf the White. It's the
Hmm.
only way I can explain him. Like there was a guy that was going to his church, and I'm not trying to make this a religious thing, just so forgive me if I am unintentionally, but he would be the kind of guy where he was trying to prove that God was real to this family. The husband was believing it, but the wife didn't want anything to do with it. And so she came to church one night, and he looked at her and said, well, he said, I'm going to send a messenger to your house tonight. Prepare yourself,
Oh my
bro.
God.
So she's like, oh, yeah, whatever. Well, they go to bed that night. Tony, which I know him, Tony's in bed sleeping. All of a sudden, he hears a scream. It's his wife. What's going on? I woke up out of nowhere for an unknown reason, and there was a person standing at the edge of our bed just watching us. Whole nother level, whole nother level. And I'm also fascinated by that because that was one of my very first introductions to the fact that there is a whole nother reality present. And interacting with these intelligence I think it's important as a species, but that's not to say that there aren't negative aspects to where they're playing by different rules and we're leaving windows open. They're sneaking through. They're the ones that created the windows.
Right.
Like we didn't even know they existed. And that's why it's the diversification of identity, so that we would never come to realize, okay, by the way, we thought they wanted this from us and they really wanted something else. So I think obviously that's why it is silencing certain experiencers, silencing certain researchers, because we're starting, and by virtue of who knows, evolution, I don't know, but we're starting to wake up to some truths.
Yeah, very interesting. Um, so then, in terms of the sexual component, I've also noticed that a lot of people with very prominent ET infiltrations and
Mhm.
interactions have an increased, predisposition towards promiscuity, right,
Oh
or
yeah, yeah,
sexuality in general. It seems to be like a heightened sexual force.
right.
What is Do you think they're trying to spread that seed, that demonic seed? Do you think?
I think that plays a role in it. Yes, they have monitored fertility and by virtue of aphrodisiacs even, and just literally imposing their will, filling the experiencer with emotions. I think it's all of the above, but my leading theory right now is that yes, they often do that to self-replicate. Matter of fact, with that case study in India, they manifested first in the image of the lover who did not wear protection. Why? To increase the probability of insemination. Stepping into that archetype, you didn't make him wear protection.
Mhm,
You're not going to make me either. That
mhm.
is, that's sinister. That's extremely sinister and manipulative. And just the way they operate. But I believe that has at least like I should say, that's my leading theory right now, that it has more to do with the self-replication of their species than anything else. But there's
Yeah.
also an underlying element of sex magic being employed.
Okay. And we see that with
And
Tantra and all the other occult
yeah,
Brotherhood of Light type of thing.
right, right. And these rituals obviously were employed by Parsons, Crowley, and other
Right.
practitioners when contacting the phenomenon. Um, but it's almost like it's a different form. I mean, what we're seeing right now, at least I am and some of my colleagues, is that the magic we're employing is nothing like the magic they're employing. It's similar to a degree, but in terms of efficacy, in terms of transdimensional tradition, I should say, what they're doing with us transcends everything. You know, the remote viewer's son I was working with, I still have new photographs. I forgot about it, but I finally pulled them out of my files. Like, oh my God. Yeah, the amulets they were carving through his skin to the surface. No, we don't have that. So it's the same concept, right? But it's different amulets. And what it appears is incredible, but it appears that the magic we're employing is to influence them on their dimension. The
Right.
magic they're employing is to influence somebody else. It's just it's complicated, I know, but
Almost
again,
as if
it's
they have avatars or managers, guides, executives. Because I see this place as a corporation.
yes,
So the
yeah,
CEO, he's
absolutely.
got the other guys, who's got the executive managers, who's got the supervisors, and then the
Right,
workers.
right. And then
So
when they're
yeah,
interfacing with us, there are policies. In their job is to follow the policy without letting us know what they are.
yeah,
I think that's incredible. Right, they're
right,
playing by different rules because they're playing a different game. And yeah, it's so like one entity was being interrogated in a possession case. This is in Kabbalistic mythology. And he had possessed the woman as an incubus. Same phenomenon. We just didn't realize it. And through the penetration came possession. That's just like we never think about what
that's
that's
crazy. I didn't think about that. That's
anathema.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Penetration was, yeah, it was an act of possession. And so, yeah, it came to come through. And so what occurred was when they're talking to this entity, why would you choose I mean, you consider, okay, earlier demonologists, you would never see them on Ghost Hunters because these guys think outside of the box. Like, they're not take two of these, call me in the morning. They're actually like, okay, first of all, who are you? And the entity was like the reason it was in the honeymoon that this entity manifested. And he said, well, we are told and taught. We're looking at policies, looking at rules that I was not allowed to penetrate her until she was already penetrated by her husband. And so this is freaky, but yeah, he's waiting. All right. Come
Yes,
on,
sir.
Johnny. Let's go. Let's go, Johnny. Hurry it up. And then when she goes to bed at nighttime, right, it's following a strict tradition, strict law here. And so I think that's fascinating because, again, I'm getting bored, quite frankly, with, oh my God, it's giving us technology. We've known that. That's great. Go make a cell phone. That's great. Go fly a spaceship. That's wonderful. But I'm looking for the hints, right, where the veil, the corners of the veil that fit enough for us to see what matters to them. What do they want?
Right.
What
That's
rules are they
exactly what I want to.
following?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And the technology that we get is really so ancient to them and so
Yeah.
lacking in comparison to the potential of technology that we're in to begin with,
Right.
right? I think it's
Yeah.
a fractal and a reflection of everything above us, just like
Yeah.
our bodies,
Mhm.
microverses of the macroverses. I think we can find all the answers in this physical reality
Yeah.
if we're looking at the same construct, right?
Well, yeah, because all of this is a projection of what's in, right? It's coming out.
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
want to go within. And I think that to a large degree, the the most profound stage of our development will occur during the research of inner dimensionality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Question is how we do that. Yeah.
I know, right? How do we do that?
How do we do that? Well, I know you have an appointment you have to get to, but it's been an absolute pleasure. I would
Thank you, my
love to
friend.
have you on for part two. There's some more things I would like to discuss, but this was
For sure.
phenomenal. So thank
Thank
you
you,
so
buddy.
much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, brother. And yeah, we'll schedule. Like I said, I'm taking May and June off.
Yeah, of course.
And
Yeah,
then by the time we get back together again, I'll have new research that I've structured and that we can, and I'll give you some insight of that. That way you'll have context. But all right, brother. I appreciate it, man. You have a good weekend.
thank you so much. You too. Take
All right.
care.
Bye-bye.